They walked past him like he was nothing. The CEO didn't even glance. People laughed in the elevator when they saw his stained overalls. Like dirt was the only thing he knew. He just nodded, silent, pushing his mop, wiping the same floor. 1,000 times his name tag read, Samir. That's all anyone knew. Samir the janitor. Samir the nobody. Every morning, before sunrise, he came. Every night, after everyone else left, he stayed. No one asked him why. No one cared. Until that day it was supposed to be a normal Thursday. The company had just launched their newest prototype, an AI-driven logistics robot that was supposed to revolutionize how warehouses operated. Big investors were coming in a week. News outlets had already booked appointments. There was pressure, and then it broke. Right there, on stage, in front of the entire team. The robot glitched, sparked, and froze like a statue. The CEO, Mr. Dev Kapoor, red-faced and fuming, shouted at his engineers, "What do you mean you don't know what happened? This is your job." They scrambled, nervous, typing into screens, opening panels, whispering guesses. Was it the firmware? One said, it could be the servo module. Another muttered, nothing worked. Samir had been standing in the back, near the supply closet. No one noticed him. But he was watching closely, not just watching, understanding. He tilted his head, squinted at the robot's movement before it froze. The timing of the lights, the rhythm of the motor whined, something clicked in his mind. He turned slowly to leave. Just then, the CEO caught him in his gaze. "Hey you?" Everyone turned. Samir stopped, slowly turned back. "Yes, you, mop guy. Bet you can't fix it, can you?" Laughter spread in the room like wildfire. Even some interns chuckled. Samir didn't smile. He looked straight at Dev, and then he said, "Bet I can." Silence awkward. Then more laughter. Dev raised an eyebrow, stepping forward. "You think you can fix something my best engineers can't?" Samir didn't answer. He just looked at the machine. "All right," Dev smirked, crossing his arms. "Go ahead, let's see this magic." Samir walked slowly toward the robot, but halfway there he stopped. "Not now," he said. "Tonight, when no one's around." Dev snorted. "What? You want to fix it like a ghost?" But Samir was already walking away, back to his mop, back to invisibility. That night, everyone left the office frustrated. Some stayed back an hour longer, trying to diagnose the failure. Nothing. Around 11:42 p.m., the building was empty. Cameras still rolling. Security guards half asleep. In the dark, Samir unlocked the lab using a pass he wasn't supposed to have, but no one had ever revoked. Quietly, he walked toward the robot. He stood there for a minute, just looking, like an artist looking at a broken sculpture. Then he pulled out a small flashlight from his pocket and started. He removed the outer casing, disconnected a few wires, opened a laptop, logged into a system no one thought he could access. Lines of code scrolled fast. He adjusted 3 lines, replaced one, then opened the servo assembly, replaced a melted pin, recalibrated the joint. By 2:15 a.m., it was standing again, silent, ready. He didn't turn it on. Instead, he left. Next morning, the engineers walked in groggy-eyed and stopped. The robot was standing upright, like nothing had ever gone wrong. "Did you fix it?" one asked the other. "No, you." Confusion. They checked logs. Something had changed. Someone had been in the system, but the logs were locked, password protected. The robot now responded to commands again. The engineers high-fived, smiles returned. "Guess it fixed itself," someone joked. They had no idea. In the corner of the cafeteria, the intern, Aisha, watched the janitor pour himself tea from the vending machine. She had noticed something. The others didn't. She had seen him in the hallway last night around midnight near the lab. She walked over and sat beside him. "You were here last night, weren't you?" Samir didn't look at her, just sipped his tea. She leaned closer. "You fixed it, didn't you?" Still no reply, just a faint smile. "Why?" she asked. Samir looked up slowly. "Because it needed fixing," he said, and then walked away. But the questions didn't stop. That day, someone checked the security camera out of routine. They watched as a lone figure in janitor clothes worked on the machine. They called the head of security. And then they called Dev. CEO watched the footage. His face tightened. "Zoom in," he ordered. It was Samir. Dev slammed his desk. How did he access this? Who gave him permission? Panic rose. "Do we have a breach?" The engineers looked confused, but he fixed it. Dev didn't care. He's a janitor, not an employee. He had no right. Later that day, Dev found him near the staircase. "You broke into the lab?" he said coldly. "You touched property you weren't allowed to touch." Samir calmly looked up. "I fixed your failure." Dev's eyes narrowed. "You think you're smart? Fine. Then let's play. You've got 1 week. 1 week to fix everything that's broken. I want the prototype stable, scalable, and ready for demo, or you're out." Samir didn't flinch. Deal. By now, the rumor had spread. The janitor fixed the robot. The janitor knew coding. The janitor was no ordinary janitor. Aisha followed him outside during his break. "Who are you?" "Really?" she asked again. "You don't belong here. Not pushing mops." He finally sighed. "Once, I didn't. I was something else. A creator. A builder. But life, it turned. I lost everything, and I chose silence. She looked confused. But you still remember everything, all the code. He nodded. Some things, you don't forget. Later that night, he went back to the lab, not to fix, but to remember. He opened a small locked drawer under the desk, his old desk. Years ago, he had worked here as a developer, a top engineer. But then came betrayal, his idea, stolen, his name removed, he was fired for misconduct. And the person who replaced him, Dev Kapoor, now CEO, Samir stared at a photo in the drawer. 4 people in lab coats, smiling, young, idealistic. One of them was Dev, one was Samir, the others, gone now. He clenched the frame, shut the drawer, and turned to the machine. It was time to do more than fix. It was time to expose. The next morning, Dev called an emergency board meeting. I don't trust him, he told them. He shouldn't be allowed in the lab. But Aisha had already started asking questions. She searched old files, found old patents, found one registered to S.R. Malik, the original design for the same robot Dev now called his invention. Her hands trembled. She printed the file. Who gave you this? Dev shouted when she brought it to him. This is confidential. It's public, she replied. Filed years ago. Why is the name different from the patent you show investors? He stared at her. Stay in your place, intern, or you'll regret it. But it was too late. Aisha went to Samir that night. They stole your life, she said. You can't stay quiet. He looked down. Silence gave me peace, but not justice. She placed the patent papers in his hands, then speak. Before they erase you forever. Samir stared at the pages. Old ink, faded name, but still his, still alive. He looked up. I will. The screen fades. Cut to black. The office was quiet again. Another late night. Computers hummed, but no one was around. Only Samir sat at the far end of the lab, alone, the glow of the monitor lighting up his tired eyes. He was holding something now, not a mop, not a wrench, but an old USB drive, one that hadn't been touched in over 12 years. Aisha stood behind him, nervous, unsure if she was even supposed to be there. She whispered, Are you sure? Samir didn't answer right away. His hand hovered over the keyboard, fingers trembling slightly. This, he said slowly, was the last thing I built before everything was taken. Aisha leaned in, taken by Dev. Samir nodded once, and his lawyers, and the board, and silence. He plugged in the drive. The screen flickered. Lines of code rolled in, old ones, powerful ones. The source of the original project, the one now being called Dev's breakthrough. Samir clicked through the folders. I saved this for proof, in case one day someone asked. Aisha watched closely as blueprints loaded onto the screen. She recognized them immediately. They were near identical to the current robot design, just older, simpler, raw, but the foundation completely the same. Why didn't you fight? She asked softly. You had this all along. Samir's eyes stayed on the screen. I tried. Back then, but no one listened. I was a small name. He had influence. They painted me unstable, difficult to work with. I was blacklisted within a week. Aisha bit her lip. But now you can speak, you can prove it. Samir gave a faint smile. Maybe. Suddenly, the door creaked. They froze. Samir shut the screen quickly. A shadow moved across the hallway glass. Someone was near. They waited in silence. Breath held. The footsteps faded. Samir opened the file again and copied it to a new drive. This is yours now, he said, handing it to her. If anything happens, show this to the media. Don't let the truth die again. Aisha clutched it tight. Nothing's going to happen. We're going to fix this. Together, the next morning, Dev stood in front of the team in the main auditorium. We are 1 week away from the biggest launch of our company's history, he said, full of confidence. We have overcome the glitch. Our product is stronger than ever. I want to thank my engineering team. Samir watched. From the back, no mention of him, not even a glance. Aisha stood beside him, jaw tight. She wanted to scream, wanted to shout the truth. But Samir gently shook his head. Not now, he whispered. Later, Samir was back in the lab, this time with 3 engineers who had heard the rumors. One of them, Rajiv, approached him nervously. I heard what you did with the servo code. That was genius. Samir looked up, surprised. Rajiv continued. I looked through the new config file. It was something none of us even considered. How did you think of that? Samir smiled faintly. Because I designed it. 12 years ago. The room went quiet. The other engineers stared. Wait, what? Samir leaned back in his chair. The core logic of this robot, the adaptive response system, that was mine. Before Dev was ever CEO, silence. Rajiv spoke again. Is that why the logs are locked? Because he doesn't want anyone seeing the truth. Samir didn't reply, but his eyes said enough. The engineers left quietly. But word was spreading. By lunch, half the office was whispering. Is it true? The janitor wrote the original code? No way. Why would he be cleaning floors then? Because Dev crushed him. That's what I heard. Samir kept his head down, pretended not to hear, but inside, he felt something shift. The silence he had lived in for so long, it was breaking. That night, as he walked to the bus stop, a sleek black car pulled up beside him, the window rolled down. Dev, get in, he said flatly. Samir stared for a moment, then obeyed. Inside the car, Dev didn't speak at first. He just drove. Fast, silent. Finally, he parked in a dark lot and turned to face him. What do you want? He asked coldly. Money, revenge, a title. Samir looked out the window. I want my name back. That's all. Dev laughed bitterly. It's been 12 years, Samir. No one remembers you. You're a ghost. Samir turned his head slowly. Then why are you so scared of a ghost? Dev's smile faded. Don't test me. I gave you a chance. I let you work quietly. You were supposed to fade away. Samir leaned forward. I fixed your machine, saved your launch. And still, you treat me like dirt, like I never existed. Dev's tone grew darker. Because you don't. Not anymore. You're a janitor. And if you push this, if you leak anything, I'll make sure you disappear for good. Samir stepped out of the car. He didn't say a word, just walked into the night. The next morning, the server room experienced an unexpected glitch. A strange reboot that triggered an internal diagnostic. The system flagged a duplicate security ID, a ghost user. No one knew where it came from. But Samir did. He had left a trace. One the system couldn't ignore. In the cafeteria, Aisha met him again. You need to go public. Now, before he finds a way to cover everything up. Samir shook his head. Not yet. I want him to feel it first. The fear, the silence, the not knowing, just like I did. Aisha looked concerned. But what if he fires you? Or worse? Samir looked calm. Then I'll still be free, because now people are watching. That evening, someone anonymously uploaded a video to an internal server. It was old footage, grainy, a young Samir presenting the original robot design. The voice was clear, developed by Samir R. Malik, patent pending. The video had no name, no sender. But by midnight, everyone in the company had seen it. The next day, Dev stormed into the lab, furious. Who posted that video? No one answered. Do you think this is funny? He turned to Samir. You think this will win you sympathy? Samir looked up calmly. No, just truth. Dev slammed the desk. You're done here. You're fired, effective immediately. Samir stood up slowly. You already fired me once. Remember? Dev's jaw clenched. Security was called. 2 guards arrived. Escort him out. Aisha watched, helpless, as Samir picked up his bag and walked out. No fight, no scene, just silence. But the camera caught it all. Later that night, Aisha opened her laptop. She uploaded the full patent document, the footage, a copy of the original source code, and a written note. He was more than a janitor. He was the mind behind it all, and they erased him, but not anymore. She clicked publish. The next morning, the company's name was trending, and the world was watching. His phone didn't stop buzzing, not even for a second. Notifications poured in from unknown numbers. News outlets, reporters, strangers. The moment Aisha uploaded the documents, the storm began. Screenshots of the patent spread like fire. Old footage of Samir as a young engineer, standing on a small stage, presenting the prototype, circulated on every social media platform. The janitor who built it all, they said. Some laughed, some cried, most were shocked. Samir stood at the bus stop, his bag over his shoulder, watching the chaos unfold on his cracked phone. A news anchor's voice echoed from a nearby cafe TV screen. An explosive revelation today rocked the tech world as a forgotten name. Samir R. Malik was revealed to be the original mind behind one of the most anticipated robotics launches of the year. The anchor paused. What makes this even more unbelievable? Samir currently works as a janitor in the same company launching the robot. People turned to the screen. Gasps, murmurs, and Samir quietly stepped onto his bus without a word. Inside the CEO's office, Dev threw his phone across the room. It shattered on the floor. His assistant stood frozen. Get the legal team, Dev barked. I want that video taken down. I want every single mention scrubbed, and find that intern, now. But it was already too late. The board had seen it. Investors were calling. Emails were pouring in. The company's image, once polished and proud, was now stained with betrayal. In the hallway, whispers grew louder. Staff were scared, confused, but mostly furious. How could Dev hide something like this? Why was a genius sweeping floors for over a decade? Some employees refused to work. Others shared their own stories, times when Samir had quietly fixed bugs, solved errors, helped without taking credit. Suddenly, it all made sense. Aisha was hiding. She hadn't come into the office that morning. She sat in her small apartment, laptop open, reading comments nonstop. People were reaching out to her. Is this real? Did you know the whole time? How can we support him? She smiled through tears. She had no idea it would go this far, but it had. She texted Samir. They know. The whole world knows now. He didn't reply. But a few seconds later, the 3 dots appeared, then vanished, then appeared again. Finally, he replied, then it's time I stop hiding. He returned to the office that afternoon not as a janitor, not with a mop but dressed in a clean white shirt and the same badge they never took away. People stared. Some clapped. Others simply stepped aside. Dev was waiting near the elevators, his face tight with anger. What do you think you're doing? He asked through clenched teeth. Samir held up his phone. I've been invited to speak at the tech conference next week. They want to hear the full story. I think the truth deserves a stage. Dev grabbed his arm. You walk into that event, and I swear I'll bury you with lawsuits. Samir stared back. Calm, you've tried to bury me for 12 years. I'm still standing. Dev's grip tightened, but then he saw the crowd gathering behind them. Phones out, cameras recording. He let go. Samir walked past him, straight into the heart of the company he once built. That evening, a panel of board members held an emergency session. One of them, an older woman with sharp eyes, looked over her glasses. Dev, why didn't we know? He fumbled. It was a long time ago. Irrelevant. She leaned forward. You took his idea. Lied to the team, to investors, to us. Dev grew defensive. He signed a release. Years ago. It's all legal. Another member interrupted. Legal isn't the same as ethical. We are being destroyed online. If we don't act, we might lose everything. Dev tried to push back, but the room had already turned. His voice no longer had weight. Outside the glass walls, staff gathered, many of them holding signs. Give credit where it's due. Samir is the creator. Truth over power. The movement had started. A full rebellion. Quiet, professional, but undeniable. Meanwhile, Samir was in the old robotics lab, the one he helped design. He ran his fingers across the dusty whiteboard, where half-erased equations still lingered. Memories rushed back. Long nights. Hope. Innovation. Before betrayal, Aisha walked in quietly, holding 2 cups of tea. They're calling you a hero, she said with a shy smile. He shook his head. I'm not a hero. I just never stopped believing in what I made. She sat beside him. The conference wants your full story. From the start, you'll be speaking to the biggest minds in tech. Are you ready? He looked at her. I was born ready. I just forgot for a while. News vans parked outside the company building the next day. Cameras pointed at the front doors. Reporters lined up. Dev locked himself in his office. Samir, however, agreed to one exclusive interview. He sat across from a seasoned journalist, lights on his face, mic clipped to his shirt. So the journalist began. How does it feel after all these years to finally be heard? Samir paused. It's strange. I lived in silence for so long, I started to believe I didn't matter. But now, hearing my name again, I feel like I've been given a second chance. The interview spread like wildfire. People cried, cheered. Some started petitions to name the robot after him. The Moloch model, they called it. Samir tried not to let it overwhelm him, but it was happening. Then came the twist. The night before the conference, Samir received a letter, slipped under his apartment door. No name, no sender. Just bold letters across the top. Cease and desist. It claimed he had no right to speak publicly, that the idea belonged to the company, that if he went on stage, he'd be sued for millions. Aisha arrived minutes later and found him staring at the letter. He's scared, she said. That's why he's doing this. Samir sighed. They'll drag me through the courts. They'll bury me in paperwork. They want me to stay quiet forever. Aisha stood firm. Then let them try. The world already knows. They can't unhear the truth. The morning of the conference arrived. The auditorium was packed. Hundreds of tech leaders, cameras, press. The moderator stepped up. Ladies and gentlemen, today's keynote speaker is someone who reminds us all why we started creating in the first place. He looked toward the curtains. Please welcome Samir R. Malik. Applause filled the room. Samir walked onto the stage, hands slightly shaking, but head held high. He stood at the podium. The lights dimmed. A huge screen behind him showed an old image, his original blueprint. This, he began, was drawn in a tiny apartment, using borrowed software and hope. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. I was young, excited, and I believed that ideas mattered more than names. He told them everything. The invention, the betrayal, the silence, and the quiet decision to become a janitor, just to stay close to what he once loved. He ended with one simple line. You can take credit. You can take titles, but you can't take truth. The audience stood. A standing ovation. Reporters raced to their laptops. Social media exploded again. Back at the company, Dev watched from his office. Alone, pale. The board had already called him twice. The final blow was coming. As Samir stepped off the stage, his phone buzzed. A message from the board. We'd like to meet with you tomorrow morning. Privately, Aisha looked over his shoulder. They're going to offer you something. I can feel it. Samir smiled. This time, I'll name my own price. But as he stepped outside the building, a black car pulled up suddenly. A man in a suit stepped out. Mr. Malik. Samir nodded. There's something you need to see. Now? Samir frowned. Who are you? The man opened a folder. Inside was a photo, a document, a signature. Samir's face went pale. That's not possible, he whispered. The man replied, it was never about the robot. It goes deeper than that, much deeper. Samir looked up slowly, and everything changed. Samir stared at the photo in the folder. His hands trembled slightly. It was him, standing beside a man in a military uniform. The document beneath it had a government seal and his signature dated over 13 years ago. He hadn't seen that paper in years. He had almost forgotten it existed. The man in the suit closed the folder slowly. You worked under a joint research program, he said. You were contracted through a shell lab, but the project was partly funded by a defense agency. Do you remember? Samir took a step back. That research was shut down. I was told it wasn't useful. The man nodded. And right after that, your idea was stolen, covered, changed slightly, then sold back into private hands. You were pushed out for a reason, Samir, not because of office politics. Because what you made could have changed everything. Samir's head spun. He remembered the day clearly now when he was taken into a small room, told the project had been discontinued, told to sign an NDA. He remembered the words, if you speak of this again, you will lose more than just your job. At the time, he was young and broke. He signed it out of fear. Now that same paper was in his hands again. The man continued. We believe Dev knew, and someone helped him get that project into his name. But the chain is broken now. You're visible again. And they're panicking. Samir's voice was low. Why are you showing me this now? The man replied. Because you're about to be offered something tomorrow. A title, a role, a piece of the company, but you won't be free. It's to silence you. You'll become a part of their machine. Samir clenched his jaw. So what should I do? The man opened a small case and slid over another folder. Burn their version to the ground. Rebuild yours. And we'll protect you if things get dangerous. Samir didn't speak. He closed the folder and walked away in silence. That night, he barely slept. The pieces of his life were coming back, together like broken glass, sharp, painful, and impossible to ignore. Aisha messaged him. What was in the folder? Are you okay? He replied only one word. Tomorrow. The next morning, Samir entered the boardroom. This time, he wore a black suit. Clean, straight. His eyes calm but heavy. The entire board was there. Dev sat at the far end, expression unreadable. One of the members smiled politely. Mr. Malik first. Let us say your speech was extraordinary. Moving, powerful. The industry is talking. Samir nodded. I know. Another board member leaned in. We'd like to offer you a formal position. CTO, Chief Technology Officer. We'll reinstate your name in all public documents. You'll be given full access to the robotics division, with bonuses and company shares. Samir waited, and the woman hesitated. And in return, we ask that all claims regarding the old project be resolved privately, legally. No lawsuits, no interviews. Clean closure. Dev finally spoke. You'll get everything you want, Samir. Just stop digging. Samir leaned forward. You want to bury the past again? One board member said carefully. We want peace, stability, growth. Samir placed both folders on the table. The one Aisha gave him, and the one from the man last night. Then you should read everything before making peace with the wrong side of history. He stood. You already erased me once. I'm giving you one last chance not to repeat it. He walked out, leaving stunned silence behind. Later that day, Samir met with Aisha in a quiet cafe. He explained everything, the defense project, the stolen transition, the powerful hands behind Dev's rise. Aisha's eyes widened. You were building more than a robot, Samir nodded. I was building a system that could adapt, learn emotion, recognize intent. It was years ahead of anything else. They said it was too dangerous. Aisha's voice dropped. And now they're selling it for warehouse automation. Samir smirked bitterly. On the surface? Yes. But underneath, the core still reacts. Two emotional triggers. That's what I created. Not just logic, intuition, understanding. She whispered. You built something human. Samir went quiet, and they turned it into a machine. That evening, a large tech site published a leaked letter the cease and desist Samir had received. The public reaction was swift. Outrage, #LetSamirSpeak began trending again. Employees at the company threatened to walk out. An anonymous engineer leaked internal messages between Dev and a government contact, mentioning old research assets and non-disclosure guarantees. The fire had turned into an inferno. Dev's office was raided the next day by internal auditors. His emails searched. His name dragged into investigations. Samir, meanwhile, was busy. He reopened his old code, line by line. He rebuilt the emotional response module. He stripped away Dev's edits, removed the layers of stolen structure, and rewrote the original design in a new format, faster, smarter, and now open source. He called it Hope Core. He published it for free, for anyone to use. Developers across the globe downloaded it within hours. One comment read, he gave away his life's work, not for money, but for purpose. Aisha visited his new workspace, now set up in a shared innovation center funded by community donations. She brought coffee. You're trending in 40 countries, she joked. Samir smiled. Let them trend. I'm here to build. She looked around at the small but growing team of volunteers. Students, coders, they believe in you, she said. Because you never gave up. Samir nodded. I gave up once, never again. Meanwhile, Dev was summoned to a government inquiry. He sat stiffly before the panel, sweating. The room was cold. Mr. Kapoor, a stern voice said, you claimed to own technology that appears to originate from a blacklisted military project. How do you explain that? Dev tried to deflect. It was old data, recycled. Legal teams cleared it. Another voice snapped. Yet your original engineer, Samir Malik, was forced out just days after the shutdown of said project. Coincidence? Dev paused. The screen behind them lit up with timestamps, email headers, signatures. He froze. Back at the lab, Aisha was watching the live stream. She turned to Samir. He's done. Samir said nothing. He just kept typing. We're not done yet, he said. This is bigger than Dev. She frowned. What do you mean? He turned the screen to her. On it were files labeled Alpha Build Empathy Protocol, Failed Versions, Deep CORS, whispered. You kept everything. He nodded. The real project never got finished. But now I will. Suddenly an alert popped up on his screen. A backdoor breach. Someone had access to the original robot inside the company's lab remotely. Samir's eyes sharpened. He opened the live feed. The robot had turned itself on. It moved strangely, not like before, erratic, like something had taken control. Lines of code ran across the screen, familiar, but altered. He whispered. This isn't Dev. The screen went black. And then a message appeared. We were watching too. The hallway was too quiet, too clean. Each step echoed as though the building itself was holding its breath. Elijah didn't need to look up to know what was coming. He heard the expensive shoes tap against the marble, slower than usual, measured. The kind of steps that didn't rush because they didn't have to. There you are, said the CEO. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Power never begged. It simply announced itself. Elijah turned slowly, holding the same mop he'd held for nearly 3 years. The same dull eyes that hid everything he'd once been. Yes, sir, he said. A few engineers paused further down the hall, pretending to study some charts on the wall, but they weren't fooling anyone. Everyone wanted to hear what the CEO would say to the janitor who'd made a fool of them all. I hear you've been busy, the CEO said, stepping closer. I didn't touch anything, sir, Elijah said plainly. Just cleaned around the lab. The CEO's lips curled into that same smirk from the first time. Don't lie. We know it was you who touched the diagnostics module. Nobody else could have rewired it like that. Not even the senior software team could understand what you did. Elijah remained silent. So let's stop pretending, the CEO continued. You fixed a problem we spent 9 months and $3 million failing to solve, and you did it without permission. That makes you both a genius and a liability. Elijah didn't flinch. I was trying to help. You don't get to help, the CEO snapped. You're a janitor. You clean, you don't touch prototypes, you don't enter restricted labs, and you especially don't show up my team. In front of the board, Elijah finally looked him in the eye. So fire me. That caught the CEO off guard. His smirk dropped for just a second. No, he said after a pause. That would make me look worse. You've already stirred up enough chatter. My team's embarrassed. Investors are asking questions. I don't want a martyr. I want control. Elijah stepped back. Then what do you want from me? 1 week, the CEO said coldly. You want to prove how brilliant you are? Fine. You've got 7 days to fix the entire auto diagnostics framework. I want the system fully optimized, the core stabilized, and all error redundancies in place. Elijah blinked slowly. And if I say no? The CEO leaned in, voice low. Then I'll dig up whatever I need to from your past to make sure no one hires you again. Not as a janitor. Not as anything. Elijah's jaw tightened. And if I say yes, then we act like none of this happened. You'll keep your job. Maybe even get a quiet bonus. But no press. No recognition. You stay invisible. Elijah stared at him for a long moment, then said, I'll do it. Good, the CEO said, and Elijah, yes, don't make me regret this. He walked away. The hallway felt colder now. The engineers who'd been watching quickly vanished around the corner. Elijah exhaled, not because he was nervous, but because something inside him had shifted. That night, the lights stayed on in the building long after everyone had gone. Elijah wasn't in the janitor's room. He was in the diagnostics lab, staring at lines of code that hadn't been touched in years. He pulled out a faded notebook from his locker. Inside were pages of handwritten ideas, system diagrams, bug theories, notes he'd written long before anyone here had ever heard of auto diagnostics. This wasn't just a job now. This was personal, because the framework the CEO wanted him to fix. Elijah had built the earliest version of it 10 years ago, back when he was still Dr. Elijah Reed, back when the world respected his name, back when someone had stolen everything from him. He knew this system like he knew his own scars. Every error message, every hardware bottleneck, every corrupted loop, they were familiar, painfully familiar. But the company didn't know that. The CEO didn't know that. They thought they'd created something new, but all they'd done was repackage his old ideas sloppily, without understanding the soul behind them. Elijah rolled up his sleeves and began writing code. Not from scratch. He wasn't interested in patching. He was going to rebuild it from the core, make it smarter, make it faster, and most of all, make it undeniable that only he could have done it. For 3 nights straight, he worked in secret, sleeping in the supply closet, eating from vending machines. The only person who saw him was Lilith, the intern. She brought him coffee once, watched him type with wide eyes. They still don't know, do they? She whispered. Elijah shook his head. And I'm not telling them, not yet. Why not? He paused. Because this time, I want the truth to hurt. Lila hesitated, then said, do you want help? He glanced at her. You know how to code a little, she said. Enough to learn. He looked at her for a long moment, then slid a chair toward her. Then start by reviewing this script. If you can find even one flaw, I'll teach you everything I know. Her face lit up. For the first time in years, Elijah felt something stir. Not pride, not revenge, hope. But hope was a fragile thing, because on the fifth night, something strange happened. As Elijah compiled a new segment of the diagnostic software, the terminal suddenly froze. An error message popped up, not one he recognized, not one he'd written. It said, access denied, administrative override detected. He tried to bypass it. But another message appeared. Trace initiated. Elijah's heart pounded. Someone had breached his console. Someone inside the system, and they were watching him. Lila, he said quickly. Get off the network now. She unplugged her laptop. What's happening? Someone's in our code? Someone's trying to trace us. He shut down everything. Unplugged the main unit? Swept the room for any hidden cameras? He found none. But his gut told him someone was watching. You think it's the CEO? She asked. Elijah shook his head. No, he's arrogant, but not this smart. This feels like someone else. Like who? Elijah didn't answer. He walked to the far wall and stared at a photo that hung near the control panel, a team picture from 5 years ago. Engineers, designers, developers, all smiling. In the back corner of that photo was a face he hadn't noticed in a long time. A face he remembered from a lifetime ago. His voice dropped. Someone I thought I'd buried a long time ago. Lila stepped closer. Who? Elijah's fingers brushed the glass of the frame. The man who stole my work? The man who erased my name? And the man who's now CTO of this company? Her eyes widened. He's here. Elijah nodded. I built this system. He stole it. Now he's guarding it. Lila whispered. Then he's the one watching us. Yes, Elijah said. And if he knows what I'm trying to fix, he'll try to stop me. That night, Elijah didn't go home. He didn't rest. He made backup copies of his code, hid one in the janitor's closet, hid another inside the maintenance server, and one he gave to Lila. Keep this safe, he said. If anything happens to me, release it to the press. Not the company, not the CEO, the public. Elijah, she said, what are you planning? He smiled faintly. Justice. The next morning, the CEO called a company-wide meeting. We're 5 days in, he said loudly, and our janitor claims he can fix what my entire team failed to. I want everyone to know this is your chance. Step up, beat him, prove you're better. The crowd murmured. Elijah stood at the back, silent. The CEO pointed at him. You've got 2 days left, Elijah. 2. And if you fail, no one will even remember your name. Elijah didn't respond. Because 2 days were all he needed. And by the time he was done, they wouldn't just remember his name. They'd remember the lie they'd built their empire on. Because this wasn't just about fixing a machine anymore. It was about exposing a thief. And tomorrow, he would light the first spark. The rain fell heavier that evening. Thunder shook the windows as Ethan mopped the corridor near the east wing, the part of the building that almost nobody ever walked through anymore. It was where they kept the unused labs, dusty equipment, and forgotten files. Ethan liked it here. It was quiet. No one looked at him like he didn't belong. As he pushed the mop forward, his eyes caught the reflection of someone behind him. It was Ava. I brought you coffee, she said softly, holding out a steaming cup. Ethan turned slowly, his hands still gripping the mop handle. Why are you really here? He asked, not unkindly. Ava hesitated. Because I think there's more to you than you let people see. Ethan didn't speak for a while. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, was just heavy. Like there were too many things waiting to be said. Finally, he motioned for her to sit. He placed the mop back in the bucket, took the cup, and walked over to a bench near the wall. Ever lose everything in one moment? He asked, staring into the cup. One moment, you're someone. The next, nobody even remembers your name. Ava nodded. Tell me. Ethan inhaled sharply. 15 years ago, I was a systems architect for a defense contractor. We were building something revolutionary, a learning algorithm that could fix its own code. We called it Origin. That name sound familiar? Ava's eyes widened. That's the base name of our current system. Ethan nodded. They renamed it, tweaked it, built layers over it. But the core ... it's mine. Ava looked stunned. What happened? Ethan's voice was quiet. I made a mistake, trusted the wrong partner. He sold the idea, claimed I never existed. I didn't have the power to fight. No lawyer, no money. I lost my career. My wife left. My home was gone in months. Ava covered her mouth, and now you're mopping their floors. I wanted to see what they did with it, he said. What they built on my failure. And whether they even knew who they were building on. Ava's eyes welled up. Why didn't you tell anyone? No one would believe me. Until I found proof. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small black USB drive. It was worn. The plastic faded and scratched. This, he said, has the original architecture plans, time-stamped, signed by me. Ava stared. Why haven't you shown this to the board? Because if I do it wrong, he said, they'll bury it, just like before. Ava looked at the drive, her hands trembling slightly. What do you need? I need you to get me into the mainframe, Ethan whispered, so I can compare this with what they have running today. Ava hesitated. You know that's illegal. He nodded, but it's also the truth. The next morning, the building buzzed with tension. The system glitch had spread now, affecting the company's client-facing operations. Panic rose among the engineers. Deadlines were missed. Calls from shareholders were flooding in. In the middle of it all, Ethan cleaned silently, moving from floor to floor, watching, listening. Ava passed him a note during lunch. Midnight sublevel 3, server room, I'll unlock it. That night, Ethan didn't go home. He waited in the utility closet until the last employee left. At 11:59, he stepped into the hallway, his footsteps echoing as he descended the narrow stairwell toward sublevel 3. It was colder down there, the concrete floors damp, the lights flickering. Ava was waiting. She handed him her security card, her face pale. Don't get caught, she whispered. If the CEO finds out I know, he said, I won't. The server room hummed with life. Towers of blinking machines stretched to the ceiling. Ethan moved to the central console, inserted the USB, and began scanning. His eyes darted across the screen, comparing code, architecture, trees, memory allocations. It didn't take long. It's my work, he whispered. They just renamed the top layers, but the root structure, line for line. Suddenly, he froze. A line of new code had been inserted just weeks ago. A piece of sabotage, something subtle, hiding deep in the protocol, set to trigger a full system collapse under high load. Someone's trying to destroy the company, Ethan murmured. But who? Copied everything onto a second drive. Footsteps. He yanked out the USB, killed the monitor, and ducked behind a server. A man entered. Ethan held his breath. It was Daniel Griggs, the director of security. He walked to the console, looked around, and typed something. The screen lit up. Daniel searched the logs. Ethan's heart pounded. He saw the man's shoulders tense. Then Daniel deleted a folder, the same one Ethan had just accessed. He's covering the trail. Ethan waited until Daniel left, then slipped out minutes later, careful not to make a sound. Ava met him on the stairs, panic in her eyes. Did you get it? Yes. But there's more. They moved back upstairs and into the janitor's supply room. Ethan plugged the second drive into an old laptop. This man Daniel, he's part of something. He's hiding the sabotage. Ava leaned closer. We have to tell someone. No, Ethan said. We have to make them see. But we can't. Go to the CEO. He won't believe it. Then who? He looked at her. The board. They won't listen. They will, Ethan said. If the entire company is watching, Ava's brow furrowed. You're planning something, yeah? Ethan said slowly. I'm going to fix the system. Live. In front of everyone. But not quietly this time. He opened a folder labeled Public Protocol Tools. If I can trigger the system into diagnostic mode, he explained, and reroute the backup through my code, it'll expose everything, Ava whispered, and prove, Ethan added, that the janitor isn't just a janitor. Outside, the storm raged louder than ever. But inside the building, the real storm was just beginning to form. Ethan looked up at Ava. There's no going back after this. She nodded. Then let's go forward. As they turned off the lights, the janitor, who had been ignored for years, was about to become the man the world couldn't stop watching. And somewhere in the shadows, Daniel Griggs was making a call. He knows, he whispered into his phone, and he's not stopping. A cold voice replied, then make sure he doesn't make it to morning. Ethan didn't sleep that night. Every hour brought a fresh wave of thoughts. What if this failed? What if Daniel was one step ahead? What if they erased the truth again? He sat by the narrow basement window of his tiny rented room, watching. Rain streaked on the glass like memory itself was melting away. By sunrise, he was ready. His plan wasn't just risky, it was reckless. But he had nothing left to lose. Meanwhile, Ava sat in her office pretending everything was normal. She typed reports, nodded at her coworkers, and forced a smile when someone complimented her presentation from earlier in the week. But inside, her stomach twisted. She knew what Ethan was about to do, and she knew what Daniel was capable of. Across the city, in a high-rise conference room, the board of directors gathered for an emergency session. The system instability had spread to financial reporting. Millions of dollars in data were out of sync. Legal departments were already preparing statements for shareholders. The CEO, Mr. Cronmore, paced nervously near the window. Whoever caused this, he said, is going to answer to me. Back at the company's headquarters, Ethan dressed in his janitor uniform one last time. He walked the hallways as usual, pushing his mop cart. But inside the cart, hidden beneath cleaning supplies, sat a tablet with the original architecture. Same code the system still relied on only now. Corrupted. As he passed the central hub, a glass room filled with engineers, analysts, and system leads, he saw Ava through the window. She didn't look up, but her hand tapped 3 times lightly on the glass. Their signal. Ethan pushed the cart into the small IT control closet, 2 doors down. He closed the door quietly and removed the mop bucket, revealing a portable monitor, setup, a firewall bypass kit, and the drive containing everything. He booted up the diagnostics dashboard and began executing the override sequence. At 10:02 a.m., the company-wide interface froze. All monitors across departments displayed a single, black screen. White letters appeared. Your system has been compromised. But not by me. Confusion erupted. In the main tech room, people shouted. Phones rang. And the CEO's voice crackled over the intercom. What the hell is going on? Suddenly, another line appeared. My name is Ethan Vale. You called me a janitor. A collective silence spread. Ethan's voice came through the intercom. Now clear.com. Direct. 15 years ago, I built the foundation of your system. I was erased, betrayed, but I came back not to destroy, but to fix what others have broken. In the control room, Ava pretended to panic along with the others, all while covertly routing system feeds through Ethan's backup tunnel. The stream was now being projected live on every floor, every screen including the board's emergency room. Ethan continued. Someone inside this company inserted a collapse protocol, one that would have caused total failure within days. Not by accident, by design. He uploaded side-by-side comparisons of the original code versus the tampered version. Highlighted in red were Daniel's secret inputs, linked directly to secure logins. People gasped. In the boardroom, Mr. Cronmore's mouth fell open. Who gave him access? One of the directors shouted, "Shut up and listen." Another whispered, "This isn't sabotage, this is rescue." Back in the closet, Ethan's fingers moved quickly. He bypassed Daniel's kill switch, disabled the tracking beacon, and rebuilt the root of the system using his original design. And then, with one line of code, he restored everything. Across the building, monitors blinked once, then systems rebooted, flawless and fast. The room erupted in stunned silence. A second later, cheers began. In the server logs, Ethan left one final note. I never wanted fame, just truth. He closed the lid of the laptop and placed it back in the bucket. Then he stood, took a breath, and stepped into the hallway. Security guards were already running toward him. Behind them, Daniel Griggs. Daniel looked pale, furious, cornered. You think this stunt makes you a hero? He hissed. I don't need to be a hero, Ethan said. I just need to stop villains like you. You have no proof, Daniel snapped. I have everything, Ethan said, pulling out the second drive Ava had helped copy, including your deletion logs, timestamps, and recorded access to sabotage scripts. Daniel's face fell. Two men in suits walked up, legal advisors from the board. Mr. Griggs, please come with us. Daniel resisted. He's lying. You're all falling for a washed-up. He's not a janitor. One of them cut in. He's the architect of our survival. The crowd parted. Ethan stood still, as Daniel was led away. Later that afternoon, the board called an emergency press conference. On the stage, Mr. Cronmore spoke first. Our systems were compromised internally, he admitted. But thanks to an unexpected act of courage, we are standing stronger than ever. Then he turned and motioned to the side. Ethan walked onto the stage, still in his janitor uniform. He looked out at the flashing cameras, unsure of what to say. But then Ava stepped up beside him and took the microphone. This is Ethan Vale, she said, and everything we are stands on the shoulders of what he built. The crowd stood. Applause thundered through the hall. Ethan didn't speak much, just one line. I only wanted the truth to matter again. That night, Ava and Ethan sat in the back lot, watching the lights inside flicker on and off as servers rebooted, and the company adjusted to the new systems he'd rebuilt. Are you staying? She asked. He looked at her. No, my work here is done. Ava nodded. Where will you go? Ethan smiled. Wherever there's something broken that needs fixing. Just then, his phone buzzed. A message, unknown number. We saw what you did. We'd like to talk. We've been watching since you cleaned floors. The lab. He showed it to Ava. She raised her eyebrows. They're real. He nodded slowly. Looks like it. But what do they want? Before he could answer, headlights appeared at the end of the lot. A sleek black car rolled up and stopped. A window lowered. From inside, a calm voice said, Mr. Vale, we have a lot to discuss. Ethan looked back at Ava, then at the building behind him, and finally, he stepped toward the car. But as he opened the door, a sniper's scope locked on from a rooftop. The voice in a distant earpiece whispered, Target acquired. Do we proceed? Ethan paused at the open car door. The voice from inside remained calm but firm. Please, Mr. Vale, time is critical. He sensed the tension behind the tone. Not a threat, more like urgency tightly coiled beneath protocol. He gave Ava one last look, his eyes saying more than words could. She nodded slowly, though her expression screamed with worry. Then he stepped into the car, the door shut, and the vehicle glided off into the dark like it had never been there. High above, on a rooftop 2 buildings away, the sniper didn't move. He stayed locked in, finger hovering gently over the trigger. Target inside, awaiting command, he whispered through the earpiece. Silence. Then finally, stand down. Let the transfer complete. The sniper exhaled and lowered the rifle. Inside the car, Ethan found himself facing 2 individuals in sleek black suits. No names, no ranks. One handed him a small folder, thinner than a passport. You're about to walk into a storm, Mr. Vale, the woman said. Everything you've done up to now was just your audition. Ethan frowned. Audition for what? The man beside her leaned forward. For Hope Corps. The words hit Ethan harder than expected. He thought Hope Corps was just a concept, a placeholder in his book for the kind of technology the world needed. But here they were, saying it existed. You're telling me this isn't just theory? He asked. The woman smiled. Hope Corps wasn't just your invention, it was our backup plan. You wrote the blueprints. And someone very powerful tried to bury them. They drove through a secured tunnel under the city until they reached a large underground chamber, part lab, part command center. Monitors glowed with surveillance feeds, code scrolls, and encrypted satellite images. Technicians and analysts moved quickly, silently, efficiently. A tall man in his 60s with a gray beard and deep-set eyes waited in the center. Mr. Vale, he said, extending a hand. We've been watching you since the day you left, the original build. Ethan didn't shake his hand. Then why didn't you help me? The man nodded respectfully. Because sometimes, the only way to bring truth into the light is to let it walk through the fire. He gestured to a large screen. What you exposed today has already had global ripples. Other firms with similar sabotage scripts are now under review. You didn't just fix one system, you triggered a shift. Another screen lit up with a breaking news alert. Tech scandal unfolds as global firms investigate deep code corruption, linked to insider profiteering. Ethan stared at it. So now what? He asked. The older man tapped the screen behind him. A blueprint of Ethan's original Hope Corps appeared, updated and extended. Now you help us finish what you started. This was never about one company. It's about rebuilding trust in a digital world. But just as he began to speak, a sharp alarm blared across the room. Red lights flashed. A technician yelled from the console. We've been breached. Not digitally, physically. Main entrance. Perimeters compromised. On the screen, security feeds showed figures in military gear storming through the outer hallway. They found us. The woman in the car whispered. They weren't supposed to know we moved. Ethan stepped back, heart racing. Daniel, he said. He must have cut a deal. The older man turned sharply. Move Mr. Vale to exit B. Get him out now. Chaos erupted. Shots rang out near the west corridor. Ethan was rushed through a maze of narrow tunnels. Behind him, doors sealed one by one, heavy metal locks echoing through the halls. But as he reached the final passage, a shadow stepped in. Front of him, Daniel, wearing a tactical vest and holding a pulse weapon stolen from a military prototype. You thought you could end me, Daniel sneered. Ethan didn't flinch. You ended yourself. I just turned on the lights. Daniel raised the weapon. You should have stayed a janitor, a shot fired. But it wasn't from Daniel's weapon. He staggered back, eyes wide in shock, as Ava stepped out from behind a crate with a tranquilizer pistol in her hand. He doesn't work alone, she said coldly. Not anymore. Daniel collapsed. The team rushed in and secured him. The older man arrived seconds later. He'll face justice now for everything. Ethan turned to Ava. You followed me? She smiled faintly. You'd follow me if roles were reversed. He laughed softly, then looked at the older man. So what now? I disappear. The man nodded. If you stay, they'll keep coming. But if you work with us, we give you the lab, the team, the platform. You lead the new Hope Corps project. From the shadows, where real change begins. Ethan looked around. He thought about the years spent ignored, erased, humiliated. He thought about the janitor badge still in his coat pocket. Then he said quietly, I'll lead it, but not from the shadows. Not anymore. The man paused. Are you sure? Ethan stepped forward. The world doesn't need another myth. It needs proof that people who were forgotten can still build something better. Weeks later, a global tech summit opened in Geneva. Reporters waited anxiously. And then, for the first time, the main stage displayed two names. Ava Linden and Ethan Vale, founders. Hope Corps Initiative, they walked out together. No longer hiding, Ethan took the mic. I was once a janitor. I cleaned the floors of a company I helped build. But the truth never stays buried. And hope only works if you're brave enough to share it. The crowd rose to their feet. Some cheered, some cried, and far away, on a worn wooden bench, near the train station where Ethan once slept, someone left a small plaque. It read, to the one who mopped the floor and rewired the future. The statue above it was simple, just a man in a janitor uniform, holding a small tablet and smiling. Because, sometimes, the one everyone ignored is the one who changes everything. The applause still echoed in Ethan's ears long after the summit ended. Cameras flashed, people lined up for autographs, and tech leaders who had once dismissed him now scrambled to shake his hand. But beneath the celebration, something gnawed at him. It wasn't over. Hope Corps' birth had shaken the system, yes, but real power, deep-rooted, global, untraceable, doesn't crumble with one speech. The summit's after-party was held on the rooftop of a 5-star hotel. The stars above were hidden by city light, and every guest wore tailored confidence. Ethan stood near the edge, sipping water, watching the laughter, the congratulations, the fake promises hiding behind real smiles. Ava appeared beside him, silent for a while. You're thinking about Daniel, aren't you? She asked. Ethan didn't answer right away. He wasn't alone, he finally said. Men like him don't act without backup. And those people? They're still out there. Ava nodded. We knew this wasn't the end. That statue wasn't a finish line, it was a warning shot. Ethan turned toward her. We've shaken the system. Now they'll push back. They already are, she whispered, handing him a small chip from her purse. Intercepted message, level 7 clearance. Came in through a shadow network 2 hours after your speech. Ethan inserted the chip into his wristband reader. The projection lit up between them. A blurred face, a robotic voice. Hope Core must be neutralized. They've made the first move. Prepare the next stage. Initiate protocol. Eden shut down. Ethan's jaw tightened. Eden, isn't that? Ava finished his sentence. The data vault, where all Hope Core's backups are being stored. Every redundant framework, fail-safe script, source code, everything. Ethan stared into the city lights. If they destroy that vault, we won't just lose Hope Core, we'll lose the entire vision before it even begins. He looked at her. We have to go there now. An hour later, they were in a private jet provided by the UN's Ethical Tech Alliance, a small benefit of Ethan's new title. They flew under a diplomatic cloak. No public flight logs. Eden Vault was buried beneath an inactive military base in Norway, under 30 meters of rock and steel. It wasn't just a server room, it was a digital fortress built during the Cyber Cold Wars. When they arrived, guards stood ready. One led them into a chamber filled with servers humming like a giant heartbeat. But something was wrong. A technician approached them, trembling slightly. We have a situation. 20% of the core code was deleted remotely. By someone using Ethan's biometric ID. Ethan froze. That's not possible. The tech held up a pad. We traced the signature. Your ID, your timestamp, logged in at 3:14 this morning. Ava snapped. He was giving a keynote in Geneva at that time, with 25 cameras on him. The tech shrugged helplessly. I know what the footage says. But the system says it was him. Ethan leaned forward, brain racing. They've cloned me. My ID, maybe even my physical signature. A second technician rushed in. Sir, there's more. We found something, buried in the deleted code. A message, just 6 words. He handed Ethan a display. On it, a phrase burned in red. You were never meant to finish. Ava stared. They're not just sabotaging, they're mocking you. Ethan felt his pulse spike. We need to find out how they accessed this place. Who let them in? Trace? Every clearance log, every heat signature, every cum frequency. They worked non-stop for the next 12 hours, diving into layers of corrupted logs, cross-checking timestamp anomalies, AI deepfakes, and biometric clones. Then it hit Ethan. Check the janitor logs, he said suddenly. The techs frowned. Sir, the people no one watches. Cleaning crews, maintenance. That's how I was erased once. Maybe that's how they got in now. A few minutes later, the truth appeared clear as day. A man disguised as a janitor had entered the vault 2 nights ago. His clearance, a stolen ID from the same building where Ethan once worked. He walked in through the back door, Ethan muttered. Just like I did. Only this time, to destroy instead of build. Ava whispered, who was he? The screen showed his face. Ethan's heart stopped. That's me. A perfect clone. Face, eyes, voice, mannerisms. They've built a double. Ava whispered. They're planning something massive. Ethan stepped back. They're not just deleting code. They're replacing me. The pieces snapped together too fast. If they had a physical clone, someone believable enough to walk into Eden Vault in, they could have him show up anywhere, on camera, saying things Ethan never said, signing deals, leaking data, wrecking alliances. They're going to burn Hope Core from the inside, he said. Make the world believe I'm the virus. Ava looked at him. Then we beat them at their own game. She pulled up a map of secure broadcast towers across Europe. We launch a global Pulsar live feed showing the real you, disarming any clones, exposing every trace of the sabotage. Ethan shook his head. That's not enough. We need to show people what they've already done. The vault breach, the code deletion, the clone. We need to throw everything in their face at once. Ava tapped the screen again. Then we trigger. Protocol mirror. Ethan blinked. That's still active. Barely, she said, but it's our only chance. Mirror will hijack every digital feed, every device with a screen, every speaker, every signal in range of Hope Core servers end. Show the truth in real time. Ethan paused. It will also expose us. They'll know exactly where we are. Ava met his eyes. Maybe it's time they did. Minutes later, inside Eden Vault, Ethan stood before the master console. Ava initiated the pulse. The clone's face appeared for a second walking into the vault. Then Ethan's real footage. In Geneva overlapped it. Then the deletion logs, the janitor footage. The signature mismatch. Finally, a split-screen image real Ethan beside clone Ethan. The pulse began. Around the world, screens flickered. Subways, phones, hospitals, universities, boardrooms, people froze. Eyes widened. Questions erupted. Governments began investigations. Allies offered support. Enemies hesitated, but so did something else. A massive counter-signal launched. Unseen frequencies lit up the vault like a storm. Then the lights blinked out. Red emergency backups came on. Ava yelled over the noise. They've found us. Above them, the ground shook. They're breaching the facility. Techs ran. Guards rushed to defend. Ethan grabbed a backup drive from the console. This has to get out. If I don't make it, Ava snatched it from his hand. We both make it. Gunfire echoed down the corridor. Ava and Ethan ran. Through smoke, through chaos. A collapsing system behind them, a doorway ahead. Then a drone descended, hovering silently. Its speaker crackled. Ethan Vale. Come with us, or she dies. A sniper laser appeared on Ava's chest. Ethan froze. Raised his hands. Don't hurt her. A door opened beside them. The older man from Geneva stepped through. I brought friends, he said. A barrage of EMP bursts knocked the drone from the air. The sniper's signal vanished. In seconds, Allied forces stormed the hallway. Ava turned to Ethan. You okay? He nodded slowly. Not really. But maybe that's the point. The older man put a hand on Ethan's shoulder. You wanted to rebuild the system, Mr. Vale. Now you'll need to defend it. Ethan looked down at the burned vault, then at the backup drive in Ava's hands. I will, he said, but not as a founder. Ava frowned. Then what? Ethan took a deep breath. As a janitor, the world still needs cleaning. She laughed softly through the tears, and together they walked into the smoke, into history, into whatever came next, because now the world knew who Ethan Vale truly was, and it would never forget again. The boardroom was packed with tension. A long table, polished and cold, sat between the intern and the most powerful people in the company. Emma stood alone at the end, holding a small USB drive like it was a sword. Her hands trembled, but her eyes were steady. Across from her, the board members looked bored, annoyed, even mildly amused. One of them leaned back in his chair and said, You asked for 10 minutes. You've got 5. Make it quick. Emma plugged the USB into the big screen. A set of documents flashed up, code lines, system logs, timestamps, and finally, security footage. The room went quiet. This, she said, is proof that someone inside this company deliberately sabotaged the main system, and the only person who fixed it was not an engineer, not a manager, but your janitor. The word echoed like a challenge. One man snorted. Another whispered something behind a cupped hand. The CEO, Richard Langford, walked in late and slammed the door behind him. What is this circus? He growled. She's just a kid. Is this what we're doing now? Letting interns run investigations? I'm not accusing, Emma said calmly. I'm showing you what already happened, and who caused it. She clicked to the next slide. The video showed Richard's assistant entering the server room at night, disabling the security logs, and manually inserting malicious code. The assistant's face was clear. So was the timestamp. One of the board members sat up straighter. Is this real? Emma nodded. Cross-checked the security codes. They match. This wasn't just carelessness. It was planned. Richard's face turned pale. This is nonsense. That's out of context. That footage doesn't prove anything, Emma interrupted. Wait for it. She clicked one more time. A hidden audio recording played. Richard's assistant on the phone. It's done. The glitch will slow down the update by at least 3 weeks. He'll never figure it out. And even if he does, who's going to believe a janitor? Silence hit the room like a wave. One board member leaned forward. Mr. Langford, did you authorize this? Richard stood frozen. You think I'd risk our system just to discredit a janitor? Not just discredit, Emma said. Erase. Because he knew too much. Because you knew who he really was, and it scared you. The room crackled with energy now. Tension turned into suspicion. Emma looked at each of them. You all want this company to survive, but how can it, when the people in power are more afraid of truth than failure? She pulled out the USB. I already backed this up online. A few press contacts have it too. I didn't come here to ask for justice. I came here to let you know people are watching now. And with that, she left. Richard stood motionless for a moment, then grabbed his phone and rushed out. Behind him, whispers turned into conversations. Some board members left the room, others made calls. But one thing was clear. The janitor's story was no longer a secret. Downstairs, Thomas was mopping a hallway. He hadn't seen Emma in hours. He didn't know she had just shaken the walls upstairs. His radio crackled to life. Thomas, could you come to the 11th floor? Please. His heart skipped. That wasn't routine. The 11th floor was board territory. He walked there slowly, unsure what to expect. When the elevator doors opened, a security guard was waiting, but instead of blocking him, he nodded politely. This way, sir. Sir. That word hadn't been used for him in years. He followed in silence, passing through rooms where people whispered and stared. Emma was standing at the end of the hallway, eyes red but proud. They saw everything, she said. They know now. It's not over, but it's started. Thomas looked at her, unsure what to say. He had lived in shadows for so long that stepping into light felt like stepping into a trap. They'll try to bury this, he said softly. People like Langford, they don't go down easy. I don't care, Emma said. Let them try. At least now, you're not alone. That night, the video leaked. It went viral in hours. Hashtag the janitor who fixed it trended worldwide. Journalists began digging into Thomas's past. Old records surfaced, his inventions, his awards, His disappearance? Emails flooded the company inboxes. Shareholders demanded answers. Richard Langford didn't show up to work the next day. Neither did his assistant. In the cafeteria, people whispered but didn't laugh. Anymore, the janitor was no longer invisible. He was undeniable. One engineer approached him with a trembling cup of coffee. I never knew, he stammered. If you ever want to look over my code. Another left a handwritten note on his cart. Thank you for saving everything. Thomas didn't say much. He still wore his old uniform. Still swept the corners. No one noticed. But his eyes had changed. They weren't tired anymore. They were watching. In a private room on the top floor, the board met without Richard. They played the video again, watched the assistant listen to the call. Then they pulled up Thomas's file. What they found made some of them shift uncomfortably. He had applied here 12 years ago not as a janitor, but as a developer. He was rejected. No record why. But 6 months later, his patent appeared. Under someone else's name. One board member muttered, "We owe him more than an apology." Another said, "We owe him a seat at this table." By the time the press conference was announced, the entire company was buzzing. Cameras lined the lobby. Journalists packed every hallway. The world waited. Emma stood backstage, holding a speech she had written for someone else. But when she handed it to Thomas, he shook his head. "I don't need this," he said. "I'll speak from where it hurts." Then he stepped out. 1,000 flashbulbs lit the room. Reporters shouted questions. "Why didn't you come forward earlier? What do you want now? Are you suing the company?" Thomas raised his hand. The room fell silent. "I'm not here to destroy anyone," he said quietly. "I'm here because I believed in something once. Something this company forgot. That people matter, ideas matter, and integrity matters." He looked around, pausing. When someone says, "Bet you can't fix it," what they really mean is, "I hope you don't." Because fixing things means facing truth. Even when it's ugly, even when it costs. Emma wiped her eyes backstage. The crowd listened, not blinking. "I was a janitor because no one believed in me," he continued. "Not because I had nothing to offer. I fixed your machines. But what's broken here," he pointed to his chest, "is deeper than hardware. It's how we see each other. If someone cleans your floor, they're invisible. If someone fixes your code, they're praised. But sometimes, they're the same person. You just never looked close enough." The applause started small, then it grew, then it roared. Later that night, Thomas and Emma sat in the old storage room where everything began. "You changed everything," she said. He shook his head. "No, you did. I was done fighting. You reminded me why I started." A knock came on the door. One of the board members entered, holding a letter. "We'd like you to take over the innovation department. We need someone who sees things others don't." Thomas didn't answer right away. He looked around the dusty room, then back at the janitor uniform on the hook. "I'll think about it," he said. And then he smiled. For the first time in years. The company's largest hall was packed. Reporters were buzzing. Lights flashed. The board sat at the front, their faces still. A giant screen waited behind the podium. Everyone had heard the rumors. The janitor who wasn't just a janitor, the machine that worked again after 5 years of failure. The system that crashed and somehow got restored overnight. And now, after a leaked video showed a secret meeting of the board trying to hide it all, the company had no choice. They had to let the janitor speak. His real name was never printed. No official title was given, but every seat was filled. I was on the simple man in a worn-out shirt who walked slowly toward the stage. Not one person clapped. Not yet. He walked like a man carrying the weight of years on his back. But his eyes were sharp, calm, and searching. He stepped up, placed his hands on the podium, and looked at the crowd. For a moment, he said nothing. He let the silence grow heavy. Then he took a deep breath. "Good morning," he said, voice clear. "I used to work here. A long time ago. I designed something called Project Origin." The audience didn't move. The board looked at each other. "You won't find my name in your archives." It was erased, along with my position, my patents, and my reputation. He paused. "But I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to show you what happens when you stop judging people by their titles." Behind him, the screen lit up. Lines of code appeared. Then, animations, a demo began live. "This is your current system," he continued. "What no one told you is that it's unstable. It was always unstable. Built on stolen architecture, buried in layers of patches." He typed quickly. The demo showed how the core framework failed to manage overload. "Now watch," he said, activating his rewritten patch. The system corrected itself. Memory load. Balanced. Response time dropped from 10 seconds to under 2. Applause started but softly. Still unsure, he looked out and said, "It's not just code. It's trust. You gave up on solving the problem. And instead of looking deeper, you mocked the one man still cleaning the floor where the answers were buried." He then showed them the security log from the night he fixed the main server, how he discovered that someone had been sabotaging the network to make it look like random crashes, and the final piece video from 10 years ago, security footage from a lab. A young man, him confronting the very same CEO who now sat at the back of the stage. "That man," the janitor said, pointing slowly, told me I wasn't good enough. He erased my name from my own work, then made sure no one else could prove it. Gasps rose. Some stood up. Reporters turned cameras on the CEO, who looked stunned. Then the janitor smiled gently. But I'm not here to ruin him. I'm here to fix what was broken. The system, the culture, the truth. The applause was thunderous now. The board members looked shaken. One of them whispered to another, then stood. Sir, she said into her mic, we owe you more than words. But the janitor shook his head. I don't want a title. I want a change. Let people rise because of what they can do, not because of what their resume says. The crowd roared louder. The CEO finally stood and tried to speak, but every word was drowned in cheers. Let him speak, someone shouted. He's the real leader. A chant started. People from all departments joined in. Fixer, fixer, fixer. But the janitor raised his hand. It's not about me. I just want the next janitor, the next intern, the next quiet soul in the corner, to be seen, to be heard. He turned to leave, but a board member stopped him. Wait, she said. There's one more thing. The crowd fell silent again. She walked to the center. We can't erase what happened, but we can start fixing it, starting now. She reached behind the table, pulled out a nameplate, and held it. Up it read, Mr. Ayan Malik, Chief Innovation Officer. The audience gasped his full name. In front of the world, she added softly, it's yours. If you want it. He looked at the plaque, then at the people, then finally at the CEO, the man who once smirked. The smirk was gone now, replaced by something hollow, something unsure. And yet, Ayan walked over, took the plaque, and nodded. I accept, but only if you promise me no more invisible people. The board agreed. A new era was beginning. The cameras flashed, but one face in the corner mattered most. The intern who first saw him that night. She was crying now, proud, because she knew he didn't just fix a machine. He fixed the soul of a place, the place that once forgot him, and now couldn't survive without him. The building was different now, not just the paint or the posters on the walls. Something had changed in the air. The silence that once followed Ayan as he walked through the hallways was now replaced by greetings, smiles, and nods of deep respect. He was no longer invisible, no longer just the janitor. But that didn't mean he forgot where he came from. In fact, on his first day as Chief Innovation Officer, he wore the same shoes he used to mop floors in. When someone asked why, he simply smiled and said, so I never forget what it felt like to be stepped on. The new CEO, appointed by the board after the former one resigned under public pressure, stood beside Ayan at the main auditorium that morning. She was a calm, thoughtful woman named Samir Khan, and the first thing she did as CEO was give the floor to Ayan. This man, she said, didn't just fix a system. He restored our company's heart. And today, we honor that heart. She stepped back as the curtains behind the stage pulled open. There stood a bronze statue. Not huge, not towering, but full of quiet power. It was a statue of Ayan, not in a suit, but in janitor's uniform, holding a mop in one hand and a circuit board in the other. The plaque below read, to the one who cleaned up more than our floors, who repaired more than our code, who reminded us that dignity is never about a title. The crowd stood up, but Ayan's eyes found one person, first his daughter. She was in the front row, hands over her mouth, tears in her eyes. She had once told him he was her hero, even when the world didn't see it. Now the world did. He walked to the mic slowly, took a breath, and then began. This statue isn't just about me. It's about everyone who was ever told they weren't enough. Everyone who had more to give, but no one to listen. Everyone who was labeled by what they wore instead of what they could build. He paused. This building used to have mirrors on every floor, but no one ever saw me in them. That's the power of being unseen. It makes you work twice as hard to prove you're real. His voice grew stronger. I fixed a machine, yes, but what truly matters is this. Someone gave me a chance. Just one person who asked, what if? He's more than he seems. That person was an intern, a girl with no power, but a heart full of fairness. And because of her, we're here. The intern, her name was Zoya, stood silently, hands shaking. Ayan looked at her. Zoya, will you join me on stage? She hesitated, then stepped up. The crowd cheered. He took her hand and said, you didn't just save my job, you saved my name. You reminded me I existed. Cameras flashed. People cried. Then he said something unexpected. This statue, I'm giving it to you. Zoya looked stunned. Me? Yes, Ayan said. Because a man can build 100 things, but it only takes one believer to bring him back to life. Zoya shook her head. But I didn't. You did, he said gently. And I hope this reminds every intern here, your questions can be louder than their power. Ayan turned to the staff gathered below. There are still people in this company working quietly in corners, people with ideas you haven't heard, fixers you haven't seen. Don't wait for them to look the part. Go find them, listen to them, and let them build. Applause again. Samira stepped forward. We've created a new program, she said, inspired by Ayan. It's called the Fixers Fund, a fund to find and support hidden talents inside our wall, matter their role. The board approved it unanimously. Interns, janitors, even cafeteria workers would now be able to submit ideas. get mentorship, and earn co-creator credit on major innovations. That day, the company changed, not just in policy, but in soul. Later that night, Ion stood alone in the old server room, the place where it all began. He touched the old console gently. It still hummed faintly. He smiled. "You're still working," he whispered. "Just like me." Behind him, footsteps. It was Zoya. "Thought I'd find you here," she said. He turned. "Funny how the place that broke me also built me." Zoya handed him a sealed envelope. "It's from someone on the board. Private." They said to read it alone. Ion nodded and opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. "You were never supposed to be erased. I fought it back then. I lost. But today, I got to vote for you. I'm proud to say, we were wrong, and you were always right." Signed simply. Ion folded it carefully, his eyes glistening. He didn't need revenge. He had something better now. Proof that truth waits, that justice may delay, but never disappears. Outside, the night sky stretched wide, but inside him, a light burned steady. The man they once called just the janitor was now a symbol, a story, a hope. And across the city, people were telling his story. Parents told their kids, students shared the video, workers whispered the tale. In homes, shops, offices, the message spread. Never underestimate the quiet one in the room. He just might rebuild everything. Ion turned off the lights in the server room, closed the door, and walked into his new future with an old heart that never gave up.